Hello and welcome to our channel. My name is Libby and I'm here to give you an introduction to Alberon and tell you a bit about the services that we provide. Alberon was started around 17 years ago here in Oxford, primarily specialising in web application development, SharePoint development, Power BI reporting and analytics, and bespoke software development. More specifically, some of the services that we provide include software development, web design development, managed web hosting, and software and web support and training. And we actually have a series of really comprehensive training courses that we're planning to launch in the near future, which will be really in-depth and teach you how to manage and keep up to date with your own online environments. And more recently, we've been expanding our SharePoint services, where we can help with development, design, consultancy, and as I just mentioned, training. So some of the SharePoint services that we offer include helping with the planning, design, and development of your SharePoint sites, migrating and updating services, and providing ongoing support, including training. So the reason we want to support more organizations with SharePoint is because it already comes as part of the Microsoft 365 subscription. So it means it's really accessible to those who already use Microsoft. And we also find that a lot of businesses don't really use SharePoint to its full potential. So we can really help organizations and individuals to maximize the benefits of the Microsoft suite of applications. And further to that, SharePoint can also be used for more efficient collaboration, document management and control, and also be customized to your organization. So it can handle any specific business processes that you might require. Now, we tend to find that people enjoy using SharePoint because of its built-in functionality. It's got centralized administration, it's very customizable, and the document management and collaboration features are really great. And ultimately, once you're familiar with it, it is really easy to use. It's very simple and not overly complicated. As I mentioned previously, it's also fully integrated with other Microsoft 365 apps, which just creates a much more seamless and efficient user experience. And we find that this really empowers the users to handle processes by themselves instead of having to really heavily rely on external support. Here we have just a small selection of many of our happy clients, including some university colleges, and we've got charities around Oxfordshire as well, who have found that their processes in general have just become much more efficient since developing their SharePoint environments. And you can read more detailed testimonials on our website. Additionally, on our website, we have a range of case studies which you might find useful to read as well. And these case studies identify the challenges that organizations are facing, and they detail how we were able to help them to create positive results that benefited everybody within their workforce. So some of the solutions that we've delivered include establishing an easy-to-use intranet, reforming permissions and access structures, and providing consultation and training to company staff to help them become more confident with maintaining their sites. And the results have been great. They've included the removal of any inconsistencies within their site structure, with ultimately far more professional setups and more appropriate systems for information sharing and access. So why choose Alberon? Well, we've got, like I said, almost 17 years of experience, and this combined with the skill and the expertise of our consultants and developers means that we know how to sort of tailor solutions to your specific business needs. And additionally, we can provide business insights and analytics, as well as in-house technical support, so you can feel comfortable knowing that your organization's technical needs are in safe hands. So if you're interested in any of the services we offer, or if you would like to know a little bit more, then please drop us an email at hello@alberon.co.uk. And of course, one of our team will be happy to discuss any queries with you. I'll shortly hand over to our senior Microsoft consultant, James. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. It will be somewhere at the bottom of the screen. And we'll have a dedicated section at the end of the webinar where we will go through all the questions, answer any of them, and hopefully sort of clear up any queries that you might have. Great, so if you're ready, over to you, James. Thank you.
Thanks, Libby. Good morning, everyone. So, as Libby said, my name's James McDowell. I'm the Senior Microsoft Consultant here at Alberon. And this is one in a series of webinars that we've been running. If you haven't managed to catch any of the previous ones, they are available in our YouTube channel and social media. And we do have quite a few more lined up. So, yeah, we'd be really pleased to have you at future ones. This one is looking specifically at Microsoft Lists versus Excel. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate Excel because I'd be very surprised if I could find anybody that hasn't either heard of or used Microsoft Excel to a greater or lesser extent. It's been an incredibly popular application from Microsoft since it was first released, and its various iterations over the years bundled in Microsoft Office. And its latest version in Microsoft 365. It's very, very useful tool for lots of people, particularly if you're thinking around finance teams or people that use more of the complex functionality, formulas, scientific measurements, etc., etc. But there are an awful lot of people that I would consider to be more casual users of Excel, so they don't necessarily need or use any of the more advanced functionality. A lot of people just use it just to populate rows of data and use it as a list or a task tracker. So for those users, Microsoft Lists may actually be a more appropriate alternative, and that's what we're going to look at. So Microsoft Lists is included in Microsoft 365. It's accessed like all the other 365 applications via your web browser through the Microsoft 365 homepage. But also there is a desktop version that you can install locally on your device. And like a lot of the other 365 apps, there's also a smartphone tablet version, so you can actually work on lists on the go. That's something I've used before. It's really useful to be able to update lists or monitor them while you're mobile or in the field. But usefully as well, Microsoft Lists is actually built into SharePoint, so you don't actually have to go into the native application. You can actually create lists straight from your SharePoint sites and make them available to your colleagues and staff, which is really good. And that is done from your SharePoint site page. You've got the new option. And as you can see, list is the first option available. So you can select that and it will bring up the create a lists options page. Now, you've got a few options from here. You can create a blank list and start completely from scratch, which is good if you're familiar with lists and you actually know what you want to do and take it from there. You can actually create one from an existing list. So once you've created a list and published it, those column headings in that list that you've created can be available to create new ones. So if you've created a list that you found really useful and you think colleagues may benefit from that, then rather than reinventing the wheel, they can actually use your list template to create their own. And as you can see, you can also import from Excel or CSV files as well. There is kind of a synergy between Excel and Microsoft Lists. So you can import from Excel. You can also export a list back to Excel. So you don't have to see it as an either or if you're comfortable with both. If there's things that you aren't able to do in lists, you can send it back to Excel and vice versa. And some people find that useful. I've been a very heavy Excel user in the past, but when I was first introduced to Microsoft Lists, I actually realized that was a better option for me. And having the ability to quickly import all my Excel spreadsheets into lists without having to start them from scratch was really, really useful and saved me an awful lot of time. So that is a very, very useful feature. And as you can see at the bottom of that dialog box, there are a lot of built-in templates that Microsoft provide, everything from employee onboarding to work progress trackers. And they've created these lists for you and pre-populated them with information that you can use as a starter, and then customize it to your own requirements. So they're really good, and I'd encourage you to take a look at them because that can save you a lot of setup time. As you can see, you've also got a from your organization option as well. So if you do create a list that you think will really benefit other teams or colleagues across your organization, you can actually save your list as a template, and that will become available there so people can use that as a useful resource. And that's quite a good option, particularly in a large organization where you can make your work available to other people. But if we go from a blank list to start, just to give it, so it'll ask you to give it a name. In fact, I've already got one called that, so we'll just call it James. And you've got the option there to show it in your site navigation, which will populate your list here alongside your document libraries. So all your staff can very quickly access it and see what lists you have available. You can put a description in as well. So if you've got a huge number of lists, it might be quite useful to actually explain what that one's about. And that will pop up when people hover over the list to get an idea of what they're going to be looking at. And then, come on, computer. And it's as simple as that. So list, as you can see now, is now available in your data list on the left-hand side of your SharePoint page. And you've got your blank list to start from. Now, there's a title column that's already added. That will always be there by default. It is possible to turn that off in list settings if that's not a column that you actually need, or you can simply select it, column settings, and rename it and turn it into a column that you might actually want. Now, I'm going to quickly touch on some of the similarities between Excel and Microsoft Lists. There are some features that are available in lists that people may find useful. You can do formulas in Microsoft Lists. I will admit it's not as intuitive as Excel. It's done in the list settings in the background, but formulas are an option. So if you know, if you've got experience with using formulas and you're kind of comfortable with setting them up, it is possible to do that with these, and it will create calculated columns based on data in other columns within your list. You can also do conditional formatting. So within each column, column settings, you've got a format this column option, and that will give you conditional formatting options that are pretty similar to what you've got available in Excel. You've also, one of the most popular, I've found, one of the most popular formulas that people use in Excel is VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. And it is possible to have a lookup column in Microsoft Lists as well. I've just recently done a piece of work with one of our clients. They basically had a Microsoft form which their staff could fill out to request permission to go to a corporate event, so a conference or an expo. So that form was published in SharePoint, and alongside that they had two Microsoft lists. The first list took the information from that form, so when someone filled out the form and submitted it, it was populated in that list, so they had a complete audit trail of who'd applied for what. But the second list had geographical regions, because they're a multinational company, and it had a list of the regions, and then in a second column it had the contact details for the person who was responsible for that region. And we built a Power Automate flow. This just to give you an example of some of the integration you can have in 365. The flow, basically, if someone filled out the form, depending on the region that they selected on the form, their information would be populated in the first list, and then that list would look up the actual contact details for that region in the second list and send an automatic email. So whatever region option they selected on the form, the right person would be contacted automatically for approval. So that's just an example of how you can get some of these things talking together. So as lookup is really popular in Excel, the ability to do that in lists is a real bonus for people. Another good thing about lists that is actually better than Excel. So Excel is very number orientated when it comes to formatting the type of data that goes into cells. Now you do have general option and text options, but a lot of the other cell formatting is really number orientated. So whether it's whole numbers, decimals, currencies, dates, and that's why Excel's really popular with sort of financial teams or people that work with a lot of number data. But in Microsoft Lists, you actually get more options than that. So if you went to add a new column, you would have a dialog box pop up. As you can see, there are a couple of text options, a single line of text or multiple. But you can also have a choice column, dates and times, person, which is really good. It looks good visually because when you type someone's name from your organization into it, it will actually pull through their 365 profile. So it'll display their photograph and their name. And if you hover over it, it brings up their contact information as well. So that's quite a good one. Obviously, you can have numbers, yes, no columns. You can have hyperlinks. So that could be someone's email address. So you can just click it and it will take you and open Outlook immediately with an email address to that person. Or it can take you through, obviously, to websites or other areas of your SharePoint environment. Currencies, another option. Locations, this is one I found really useful. So you can actually put location data in and it uses Bing Maps. So you can have everything from addresses to towns, cities, postcodes, countries, and it'll actually store that data as an actual searchable location, which is a really useful feature. You can have an image column where you can post images in. We've worked with a client actually who had a list which contained all their product information, and they had photographs of their products included as a column, which was quite useful for customers. Manage metadata. This is something we've discussed in a previous webinar with document libraries. It is possible to have metadata columns in lists, so it allows you to use SharePoint's really powerful filter and search functions. So if you've got a list that contains a huge amount of rows of information, you can actually quickly filter on that by keywords and get to the data that you actually need. As I mentioned, you can have a lookup column as well, so you can get your list to look up information from another list and create some sort of intelligent interaction between different data sources. So that's another really useful one. And then the last option says seal column types. That will actually take you into the master list settings where there are other options available, and that's where you would do your formulas in calculated columns or some various other ones. So there's a lot of options in there. So yeah, to have this wide variety of column headings is really useful and gives you slightly more capacity than Excel can actually provide if you're keeping lists of data that are not necessarily number orientated. Another good thing about lists is it's in the perfect format for Power BI. So if any of you are using Power BI or you're planning on using it or it's something you want to explore, Power BI likes having clear column headings and simple rows of data with good data validation. And Microsoft Lists provides that out of the box. So Power BI can pull in data from a huge amount of sources. SharePoint Lists is one of them, and you'll find that you don't have to do as much manipulation of the data in Power BI before it becomes useful because it's already in the format that Power BI wants. So I know from experience, and I'm sure many of you the same, I've lost count of the amount of hours that I've spent trying to make my Excel spreadsheets look pretty with formatting and cell merging and cell filling and adding in charts. But actually, it's a lot more simple with lists. You can just have simple rows of data with good data validation, and then you can use Power BI to create all the really smart, fancy, interactive visuals, which you can then publish in SharePoint, or you can even publish external. It's possible to embed Power BI dashboards into websites, for example. And that's a much cleaner way of looking. It's less intensive. Just keep your data simple and let Power BI do all the magic. And we will be looking at Power Apps and Power BI specifically in a future webinar. So if that's something you're interested in, please feel free to attend that. It's something we'll look at. Microsoft Lists can also be used in conjunction with Microsoft Purview, which is another resource that we've spoke about previously, which is around data governance and data management. So it is possible to add retention labels within your list, and you can also apply sensitivity labels as well. These can be added in bulk at the list level through list settings, or you can assign them individually to the rows of data within your list. So you can apply the governance and security settings to lists that you can to your document libraries, which is another really useful feature. To give you an example of what a list might look like, this is just a sample one that I've created. This was actually created created for that client that I spoke about, so that we could get the automation working and get them looking, one list looking at the other. So as you can see, you can do conditional formatting based on cell entries. There's a variety of options and different ways you can have that data visually. Dates, you can set the formats of dates, so you can have it in a friendly format, or as you can see there, in a standard, actually this is US format, I've just noticed, but standard date. Regions, so this is actually taking a geographical region. So if you use one of the map visuals on Power BI, it will actually zoom in on a global map to show you the region. And as you can see, these are highlighted in blue, they look like hyperlinks. And that's because this column is actually a lookup column, and it's looking up information in test list 2, which I'll quickly show you now. So that actually links the region choice with some contact information. And this is how we used it with that client. So depending on the choice that their staff made on the form, it would send an email to the appropriate person. So the integration is really good. Airports and locations. This is using Bing Maps, as I said, so you can actually search for locations just as you would in your sat nav or in sort of Google Maps or Apple Maps. And then it's automatically selected the actual city or more defined location for where that airport exists. So the location features in this is really good. As I said, you can use numbers and currencies, and you've got the same options that you have in Excel. And then this is an example of a people list. So it's actually pulled in these people's information straight from their 365 profiles. And as you can see, it will display a photo if they've uploaded one, and their name. So actually visually it looks a lot cleaner than Excel. It takes less setting up. A lot of the work's done for you. As I said, there's good conditional format options, but really you don't have to be overly concerned about making this look pretty. It's just designed to be simple. You can then use Power BI to actually jazz it up and actually create all the smart visuals that you want. And that's basically what I'm going to cover. I have found lists really useful. I know there are people where Excel is absolutely the right option. It's the right application for them if you are using very complex formulas or you want to use some of the more advanced functions. So it's not an either or either. I mean, you can use both depending on what you're trying to achieve. But as I said, for people that are just using Excel just to keep simple lists or tracking data, Microsoft Lists is a really good option. And I would encourage you to give it a try if you haven't. Import some data from Excel if you've got some, and see if it works for you. And I'll hand back to you, Libby.
Great, thank you. That's a really good insight. So I think we can wrap up now. So thank you very much, James. Just a reminder to all of our attendees, if you have any more questions, feel free to drop us an email. It's hello@alberon.co.uk. Or if you're interested, like I said earlier, in any of our other services, you can find that information on our website as well. So great, thank you for attending.